The dusty streets of Fort Kearny, Nebraska, had never seen a woman quite like Zara Whitmore. When she stepped off the stagecoach in the spring of 1873, carrying more books than petticoats and wearing spectacles that caught the harsh prairie sunlight like tiny mirrors. She was 23 years old, educated at a women's college back east, and determined to open a school in this frontier town, where education seemed as scarce as rain in August. Within her first week, she discovered that intelligence in a woman was considered more dangerous than a rattlesnake in a sleeping bag. "Ain't natural," Mrs. Henderson declared loudly at the general store, making sure Zara could hear every word from across the counter. "A woman with all that book learning, who's going to want to marry a female who thinks she's smarter than a man." Zara kept her chin high as she selected supplies, though the words stung more than she cared to admit. Back in Boston, her professors had praised her mind. Here, it seemed her greatest asset had become her deepest flaw. The small boarding house where she rented a room offered little comfort. Mrs. Calloway, the proprietor, was kind enough but made it clear that educated women rarely found happiness on the frontier. "Men out here need wives who can cook and clean and bear children," she said with sympathy that felt like pity. "They don't need someone quoting Shakespeare while the bread burns." But Zara had not traveled 1,500 miles to abandon her dreams. She found a small building at the edge of town, formerly a grain storage shed, and began transforming it into a schoolhouse. The work was harder than anything she had done in her life. Her hands, once soft and suited only for turning pages, developed blisters that burst and bled. Her back ached from sweeping and scrubbing. Yet she persevered, driven by a vision of children's faces bright with the joy of learning. The town's response was tepid at best. A few families promised to send their children, but most were skeptical. "What's a girl need to know beyond sewing and cooking?" one father asked. "And boys got work to do. Can't spare them for sitting in a schoolhouse all day." It was during one of her supply runs to the general store that she first encountered Samuel Parker. He was standing near the feed supplies, a tall man in his late 20s with sun-weathered skin and hands that looked like they had never held anything gentler than a horse's reins. His dark hair needed cutting, and his beard was several days past respectable, but his eyes held an intelligence that surprised her. He was staring at her books. "Can you actually read all those?" His voice was rough from disuse, as if he spent more time talking to cattle than people. "Of course," Zara replied, bristling slightly at the implication. "What's it like?" The question was so earnest, so devoid of mockery, that she stopped and looked at him properly. "What's what like? Reading? Really reading, I mean, not just making out words on a seed packet." His face colored slightly, as if embarrassed by his own curiosity. "I can read some. My ma taught me letters before she died, but nothing like what you got there." Before Zara could respond, a group of men entered the store, and Samuel seemed to shrink back, as if afraid to be caught talking to her. She watched him leave without another word, wondering about the lonely rancher who wanted to know what reading was like. She learned his story in pieces over the following weeks. Samuel Parker owned a small ranch about 5 miles outside town. He had inherited it from his father 3 years ago and ran it alone, except for one hired hand who came and went with the seasons. People said he was strange, keeping to himself, rarely coming to town except for necessary supplies. Some whispered that he was simple-minded. Others said he was just odd. Zara suspected he was simply lonely. Her school opened on a Monday morning in late May with exactly 4 students, 3 children from families too poor to be particular about education, and one 10-year-old girl whose mother had defied her husband to send her. It was not the triumphant beginning Zara had imagined, but she threw herself into teaching with the same passion she had once reserved for her own studies. The mockery continued. Women at church whispered behind gloved hands. Men made jokes about the schoolmarm who was too smart for her own good. Even the local newspaper editor, when she submitted an article about the importance of education, published it with a condescending note about the enthusiasm of youth and inexperience. "Maybe they're right," she confided to Mrs. Calloway one evening, fighting back tears of frustration. "Maybe I should have stayed in Boston. And done what? Become some man's wife and never use that brain of yours." Mrs. Calloway set down her knitting with unusual force. "You're threatening them, dear. Nothing scares a small mind more than a large one." It was a Wednesday afternoon in early June when Samuel Parker appeared at her schoolhouse door. The children had just left, and Zara was cleaning the slate board when she heard his hesitant knock. "Mr. Parker," she said, surprised. He stood in the doorway like a man facing execution, his hat crushed between his hands. "I've been thinking about what you said, about reading." He paused, struggling with the words. "I want to learn properly. I mean, I can pay." "Pay?" Zara set down her cloth. "I got money saved." "Not much, but I can pay for lessons, if you'd be willing." His face was red, but his gaze was steady. "I know it's foolish, a man my age wanting schooling like a child." "It's not foolish at all." The words came out more forcefully than she intended. "It's never too late to learn. Folks already think I'm strange." He looked down at his battered hat. "This'll just give them more reason to talk. Let them talk." Zara surprised herself with her own vehemence. "I've discovered that people will find reasons to mock regardless of what you do. You might as well do what matters to you." So they made an arrangement. Samuel would come to the schoolhouse 3 evenings a week after he finished his ranch work. He would pay what he could afford, though Zara made the price minimal. She told herself it was simply good business to have another student. But in truth, she was moved by his hunger to learn, by the way he approached education as a precious gift rather than a burden. Their first lesson was halting and awkward. Samuel knew his letters but struggled to piece them into words. He became frustrated easily, his large hands clenching into fists when sentences eluded him. But he never gave up. He arrived every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday evening, often smelling of horses and honest sweat, and worked through his reading primer with the determination of a man breaking wild mustangs. "I feel stupid," he admitted one evening after struggling through a particularly simple passage. "You're not stupid. You're learning. There's a difference." Zara pointed to the sentence again. "You're trying to run before you can walk. Let's slow down. Did you always know how to read like you do?" "I've been reading since I was 4 years old." "You've been seriously reading for 3 weeks. Compare where you are now to where you were on the first day." He considered this, then slowly worked through the passage again. This time the words came easier. When he finished, a smile broke across his weathered face like sunrise over the prairie. "I did it." "You did it," Zara confirmed, and felt her heart lift at his simple joy. As spring turned to summer, their lessons developed a rhythm. Samuel proved to be a dedicated student, practicing between sessions until his copy of the primer became worn from handling. He asked questions constantly, wanting to understand not just how to read but why words worked the way they did. His mind, Zara discovered, was far sharper than anyone in Fort Kearny gave him credit for. "They think I'm dumb because I don't talk much," he told her one evening. "Truth is, I never had much to say that seemed worth saying. Out on the ranch, the horses don't care about conversation. Why do you stay out there alone?" He was quiet for a long moment, his finger tracing the words in his book. "My father wasn't an easy man. After he died, I thought I'd feel free, but I just felt lost. The ranch is all I know, and I guess I got used to being by myself. Doesn't it get lonely every day?" He looked up at her then, and something in his eyes made her breath catch. "Until recently." The air between them seemed to thicken. Zara cleared her throat and turned to the next lesson, but she was acutely aware of him sitting beside her, of the way his shoulder nearly touched hers as they bent over the book together. The town's opinion of their arrangement ranged from amusement to scandal. The fact that an educated woman was teaching a grown man his letters provided endless fodder for gossip. Mrs. Henderson declared it inappropriate. The saloon keeper made crude jokes about what kind of teaching was really going on. Even the minister's wife suggested that Zara might want to consider the appearance of impropriety. "Let them talk," Samuel said when Zara mentioned the gossip. "They've been talking about me my whole life." But it bothered her more than she admitted. She had hoped to earn the town's respect, to prove that an educated woman could contribute meaningfully to frontier life. Instead, she seemed to be confirming their worst suspicions. Her small school struggled. By midsummer, she was down to 3 students as families found excuses to keep their children home. The money she had saved was running dangerously low. Mrs. Calloway, kind as she was, needed the rent paid on time. "You could go back east," the boarding house proprietor suggested gently. "Find a position at a school where they appreciate learning." "I don't want to go back." Zara was surprised by the fierceness of her own conviction. "I want to make this work." But wanting and achieving were different things, as she was learning. The frontier was beautiful and brutal, and it did not reward idealism. It was Samuel who gave her hope without meaning to. His progress in reading was remarkable. By late July, he was working through books that would challenge many adults. He devoured everything she could provide: histories, novels, agricultural manuals, even poetry, which he claimed to find puzzling but fascinating. "Listen to this," he said one evening, reading aloud from a collection of Wordsworth. His voice was hesitant but growing stronger. "I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills." He paused. "That's how I felt before, like a cloud just drifting, no purpose. And now I feel like maybe there's more to life than just surviving until the next season." He closed the book carefully, treating it like a fragile treasure. "You've given me that, made me see there's a whole world beyond the fence lines of my ranch. You're giving yourself too little credit. I'm just providing the tools. You're doing the work. Can I ask you something?" He turned to face her fully. "Why'd you come here? You could teach anywhere. Why Fort Kearny?" Zara considered the question. "I wanted to go somewhere I was needed. Back east there are plenty of teachers. Out here I thought I could make a real difference." "You have. You've made a difference to me." The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. "That means more than you know." As summer deepened, their relationship shifted in ways both subtle and profound. Samuel began staying after lessons to help her tidy the schoolhouse, to repair a broken desk, to fix the door that had been sticking in the humid weather. He brought her vegetables from his garden, eggs from his chickens, once even a jar of honey from a hive he had carefully harvested. "You don't have to bring me things," she protested. "I know, I want to." He set the honey on her desk. "You're always giving to me. Feels right to give something back." She started looking forward to their lesson evenings with an eagerness that went beyond teacherly duty. She found herself thinking about him during the day, wondering what he was doing on his ranch, whether he was practicing his reading, whether he thought about her the way she was thinking about him. It frightened her, these feelings. She had come to Fort Kearny to prove herself as an educator, not to fall in love with a lonely rancher. Love was a distraction, a potential trap. She had seen too many intelligent women sacrifice their ambitions for marriage and domesticity. But Samuel was different from the men she had known back east. He did not feel threatened by her intelligence. He celebrated it, drew it out, asked her opinion on everything from crop rotation to philosophy. With him, she never had to diminish herself to make him comfortable. One August evening, after a particularly successful lesson where Samuel had read through an entire chapter of a novel without assistance, he turned to her with an expression of wonder. "I never knew the world could be so big," he said. "All these stories, all these ideas. It's like I've been living in a small room my whole life and you've opened a door to a mansion. The door was always there. You just needed someone to show you where it was." "No," he shook his head firmly. "You're not just showing me doors, you're changing everything. The way I see things, the way I think about things, even the way I run my ranch. I've been reading those agricultural journals you lent me, and I've got ideas for improvements I never would have thought of before." His enthusiasm was infectious. "Tell me," Zara urged. For the next hour, they talked about irrigation techniques and soil management, about breeding programs for cattle and the economics of ranch management. Samuel's ideas were intelligent and well-reasoned, proving what Zara had long suspected. His isolation had been circumstantial, not intellectual. "You should write these ideas down," she suggested. "Submit them to one of the agricultural newspapers." "Me, write for a newspaper," he laughed, but she could see the idea intrigued him. "Why not? Your insights are valuable. Other ranchers could benefit from your experience." "I don't know if I'm ready for that. You're more ready than you think." She placed her hand on his arm without thinking, then froze, suddenly aware of the impropriety. But Samuel did not pull away. Instead, he covered her hand with his own. "Zara." Her name in his rough voice sounded like a prayer. "I need to tell you something." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "What is it?" "These lessons, this time with you, it's become the most important part of my days. I know that's not proper to say. You're my teacher, and I'm your student, and there's supposed to be a distance between us. But I can't pretend anymore that I only come here for the reading." She should have pulled her hand away, should have reminded him of propriety and appropriate boundaries. Instead, she found herself saying, "I can't pretend either. I'm not good with words even now, but you make me want to find them, want to be better than I am." He paused, searching her face. "I know I'm not what a woman like you should want. I'm just a rancher, rough and simple. But I'm asking you to consider, maybe, that we could be something more than teacher and student." "You're not simple," Zara said fiercely. "You're one of the most intelligent men I've ever met. You just never had the chance to show it. Is that a yes?" "It's a yes to considering." She smiled, feeling reckless and brave. "It's a yes to seeing where this goes." He stood then, still holding her hand, and pulled her gently to her feet. For a moment, they simply stood together in the quiet schoolhouse, the evening light slanting through the windows and painting everything gold. Then Samuel leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and kissed her with a gentleness that made her heart ache. When they finally separated, both were breathing hard. "I've never done that before," Samuel admitted. "I hope it was all right." It was more than all right. Zara touched her fingers to her lips, amazed. It was perfect. But their happiness was short-lived. News of their relationship spread through Fort Kearny with the speed of a prairie fire. The town that had merely mocked Zara for being educated now condemned her for being improper. Women who had previously been coldly polite now crossed the street to avoid her. Men made ribald comments when she passed. Even her few remaining students began to disappear as parents decided they could not trust their children to a woman of questionable morals. "All you did was kiss the man, Mrs. Calloway said indignantly. "The way they're carrying on, you'd think you'd committed murder." But the damage was done. By the end of August, Zara had no students left. The schoolhouse stood empty except for her and Samuel during their evening lessons. Her savings were gone. She was a month behind on her rent and had no prospects for income. "You could marry me," Samuel said one evening. "Come live at the ranch. You wouldn't have to worry about money or what people think." "I can't do that." Zara's voice was anguished. "Don't you see? That's exactly what they expect. The educated woman fails and has to be rescued by a man. I'd be proving them right. Or you'd be choosing your own life on your own terms." He took her hands in his. "I'm not asking you to give up teaching. We could start a school at the ranch, bring in children from the outlying farms. Families who can't get their kids to town regularly. You'd be doing even more good than you are here. You're just trying to make me feel better. I'm trying to offer you options." His grip tightened. "Zara, I love you. I didn't expect it, didn't think someone like me could ever feel this way. But I do. And I think maybe you love me too. Is it so wrong to want to build a life together?" She did love him. That was the terrifying truth she had been avoiding. She loved his earnestness, his hunger for knowledge, the way he looked at her as if she held the secrets to the universe. She loved the man he was becoming as he gained confidence in his own intelligence. She loved the way he listened to her, really listened, treating her thoughts as valuable rather than threatening. But she was also terrified. "What if I lose myself?" she whispered. "What if marriage turns me into someone I don't recognize? Then I'll remind you who you are." He pulled her close, and she let herself lean into his strength. "I fell in love with your mind first, Zara. Your brilliant, beautiful mind. Why would I want that to change? Men say that before marriage. After, they want obedience and silence. I'm not most men, and you're not most women. We'll figure it out together." She wanted to believe him, but years of watching intelligent women diminish themselves for marriage made her cautious. "Give me time," she pleaded. "Let me think about this." "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." But time was a luxury she did not have. A week later, Mrs. Calloway came to her room with an apologetic expression and a firm deadline. "I'm sorry, dear, but I need to rent this room to someone who can pay. I can give you until the end of the month." Zara had nowhere to go and no money to get there. Her dream of frontier education lay in ruins around her. She could write to her family in Boston, beg them to send money for a stagecoach ticket home, and return in defeat. Or she could accept Samuel's proposal and try to build something new. The decision should have been simple. But pride was a powerful thing, and hers had taken a beating. She was sitting in the empty schoolhouse, surrounded by the books and supplies she could no longer afford to keep, when Samuel found her. He took one look at her tear-stained face and sat down beside her without a word, simply offering his presence as comfort. "I failed," she said finally. "I came here to make a difference and I failed. You taught me to read. How is that failure?" One student. "I was supposed to educate a whole generation of children. You educated me, that matters." He put his arm around her shoulders. "And you haven't failed. You've just hit a setback. There's a difference. The town drove me out because I dared to be educated and female. How is that not failure? Because you're still here, still fighting, still believing education matters." He turned her face toward his. "Marry me, Zara. Not because you're desperate, but because we can do more together than apart. Let me be your partner in this. We'll start that school at the ranch and we'll make it work, together. You're asking me to give up everything I planned. I'm asking you to adapt your plan, to be flexible, to trust me." His eyes searched hers. "I know I'm asking a lot. I know you're scared, but I'm scared too. Scared of losing you, scared of going back to that empty ranch and that lonely life. You've woken something up in me and I don't want to go back to sleep." In that moment, Zara made her choice. Not out of desperation or defeat, but out of hope. Hope that Samuel meant what he said. Hope that they could build something meaningful together. Hope that love and partnership could be more powerful than pride. "Yes," she said, "I'll marry you." His kiss was deeper this time, less hesitant, and she responded with equal passion. When they finally pulled apart, both were grinning like children. "When?" Samuel asked. "Soon, before I lose my nerve." They were married 3 days later by a justice of the peace with Mrs. Calloway and Samuel's ranch hand, Tom, as witnesses. Zara wore her best dress, which was still plain by city standards but felt special with Samuel looking at her as if she were the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. They exchanged simple vows, promising partnership and respect along with love and fidelity. The town's reaction ranged from satisfaction to schadenfreude. "Knew she'd end up having to marry," Mrs. Henderson announced in the general store. "Book learning doesn't put food on the table." But Zara found she did not care as much as she expected. Let them think what they wanted. She had Samuel, and she had a new plan. The Parker Ranch was 5 miles of rough road from Fort Kearny, nestled in a small valley with a creek running through it. The house was modest but well built, and Samuel had clearly tried to make it presentable before bringing her home. Fresh flowers stood on the kitchen table and the floors had been swept clean. "It's not much," he said anxiously, "but it's solid. And there's that old barn we could convert into a schoolhouse if your idea works." Zara walked through the house, seeing not what it was but what it could become. "It's perfect," she said honestly. "It's home." That night in the bedroom they now shared, Samuel was gentle and patient with her inexperience. "We don't have to rush anything," he murmured against her hair. "We have all the time in the world." But Zara wanted to be brave. Wanted to claim this part of her new life with the same determination she had brought to teaching. "Teach me," she whispered, echoing his own words from months ago. "Teach me everything." He did, with a tenderness that made her cry and a passion that set her body aflame. By the time the sun rose over the prairie, they had truly become husband and wife, and Zara understood for the first time how physical love could be an expression of emotional connection. The next weeks were a period of adjustment. Zara learned the rhythms of ranch life: early mornings, hard physical labor, the constant demands of animals and land. Her hands, which had finally healed from building her schoolhouse, developed new calluses from ranch work. She learned to cook over a wood stove, to preserve vegetables for winter, to help Samuel with tasks that required 2 pairs of hands. But Samuel kept his promise. Every evening after the chores were done, they read together. He was working his way through increasingly difficult books, his confidence growing with each completed volume, and they began planning their school. "The Anderson family lives about 3 miles north," Samuel said, pointing to a rough map he had drawn. "They have 4 children, all under 12. The Johnsons are 2 miles east, 3 children. The Wews are 5 miles south, and they have 6 kids who never get any schooling because the parents don't speak English well. How many families total?" "I count about 8 within reasonable distance." "That's maybe 20 children who could benefit from education." It was more students than she had ever had in Fort Kearny. Zara felt hope kindle in her chest. "When could we start?" "We need to convert the barn first. Make it weatherproof for winter, build some desks, get supplies." He did some mental calculations. "If we work hard, we could be ready by late October." They threw themselves into the project with shared determination. Samuel proved to be skilled at carpentry, building sturdy desks and benches from lumber he had been saving for other projects. Zara cleaned and whitewashed the barn until it gleamed. They used some of her books and ordered more through the catalog, stretching their limited funds as far as possible. Word spread among the outlying families. Samuel rode out to visit each one personally, explaining what they were planning. The response was cautiously optimistic. These were families too far from town to benefit from traditional schooling, too busy with survival to provide education themselves. The idea of a school within traveling distance was appealing. "Will your wife really teach children of all ages?" Mrs. Anderson asked. "My oldest is 11, but my youngest is only 5. She'll teach anyone willing to learn," Samuel assured her. "Age doesn't matter, neither does background. She believes everyone deserves education, even Chinese children." This from Mr. Johnson, who had been listening skeptically. "I heard you mention the Wu family." "Every child," Samuel said firmly. "My wife believes that knowledge belongs to everyone." It was a radical position in 1873 Nebraska, where prejudice against Chinese immigrants ran deep. But Zara was adamant. "Education is not a privilege for the lucky few," she told Samuel. "It's a right for all children." The Wu family's gratitude was overwhelming. When Samuel and Zara visited their small farm to discuss the school, Mrs. Wu cried. "My children speak English better than me," she said through her tears and her husband's translation. "But they cannot read or write. You give them big opportunity." On a crisp October morning, the Parker School opened its doors to 17 students ranging in age from 5 to 13. They came from 8 different families, representing various economic and ethnic backgrounds. It was everything Zara had dreamed of back in Boston. Education available to all, regardless of circumstance. The first day was chaotic. The children were unused to structured learning, and Zara had to develop systems for teaching multiple age groups simultaneously. But she loved every challenging minute. This was why she had come west. This was her purpose. Samuel helped however he could. He built a small addition to the barn to house Zara's growing library. He ensured the stove was always stocked with wood so the children would be warm. He even assisted with lessons sometimes, reading to the younger children while Zara worked with the older ones on more advanced subjects. The children adored him. He was patient and kind, never making them feel stupid for not knowing something. The Wu children, who were shy at first, gradually opened up to him. The Anderson children, who could be rowdy, respected his quiet authority. He had found a calling he never expected, and he was good at it. "You're a natural teacher," Zara told him one evening after a particularly successful day. "I just remember what it felt like to not know things and want to learn," he replied. "Besides, I'm learning as much as they are." "Did you know there are 26 states in the country now? I thought it was still 20. She loved watching him discover the world through reading. He approached every book with wonder, every fact as if it were a precious gem. His enthusiasm was infectious, reminding her why education mattered. As autumn deepened into winter, the school became a fixture of the community. Parents were amazed by their children's progress. The Wu children were reading English fluently by December. The Anderson children were working through arithmetic problems that would have baffled them months earlier. Even the youngest students were learning their letters and numbers. The success did not go unnoticed. One day in January, a delegation from Fort Kearny appeared at the Parker Ranch. It included the mayor, the minister, and surprisingly, the editor of the newspaper who had once condescended to Zara. "Mrs. Parker," the mayor began, hat in hand, "we've been hearing about your school out here, the results you're achieving with these children." Zara waited, unsure where this was going. "We were wondering if you might consider reopening a school in town. We recognize now that we may have been hasty in our judgment of you. You mocked me," Zara said bluntly. "You drove away my students. You called me unnatural for being educated." The mayor had the grace to look ashamed. "We were wrong. We see that now. These children's parents have been talking, showing us their progress. What you're doing here is remarkable. And you want me to come back to town and teach there?" Zara crossed her arms. "Abandon the students I have now? We were hoping you might do both, the minister interjected. Perhaps an older student could assist you at the ranch while you spend some days teaching in town. Zara looked at Samuel, who had been standing quietly beside her. He gave a slight nod, indicating the choice was hers. No, she said finally. I'm needed here. These families trusted me when no one else would. These children are thriving. I won't abandon them for the convenience of a town that rejected me. But surely you see the greater good, the editor protested. There are more children in town who need education. Then hire another teacher. Someone you won't mock or drive away. Zara's voice was steel. My commitment is to this community now. After the delegation left, deflated and disappointed, Samuel pulled her into his arms. I'm proud of you, he said. That took courage. I won't let them treat education as something to be turned on and off based on convenience. These children matter. This work matters. You matter, Samuel corrected. And you've proven everything you set out to prove. You've made a real difference out here. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Zara reflected on how much her life had changed. A year ago, she had been a lonely teacher in Fort Kearny, mocked for her education and struggling to find students. Now she was a wife, a rancher, and a teacher to a thriving school. She had Samuel, who challenged her intellectually and loved her unconditionally. She had work that fulfilled her and a community that valued her. You ever regret it? Samuel asked, as if reading her thoughts. Marrying me, staying out here instead of going back east? Never. She leaned into him. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Winter gave way to spring, and the school continued to flourish. The students' progress was so remarkable that other families began inquiring about enrollment. Zara had to turn some away, limited by space and time. The barn that had once seemed spacious now felt cramped with 22 students. We need to expand, she told Samuel one evening in April. I was thinking the same thing. He pulled out the plans he had been sketching. What if we built a proper schoolhouse? Bigger, with separate areas for different age groups. We could even add a small library. That would cost money we don't have. We could fundraise. Ask the families to contribute what they can, maybe take out a small loan for the rest. He looked at her seriously. Zara, this school is becoming something important, something that could last beyond us. It deserves a proper building. The idea took hold. They presented it to the families, who responded with overwhelming support. Some contributed money, others labor. The entire community came together to build a new schoolhouse on the Parker property. It was larger than the barn, with big windows to let in light, a real chalkboard, and space for 40 students. The building was completed in late May, just in time for the end of the school year. They held a celebration, inviting all the families and students. There was food, music, and speeches. Parents stood up to thank Zara and Samuel for giving their children opportunities they never had. My daughter can read better than me now, Mr. Anderson said, his voice thick with emotion. She's going to have chances I never did. That's because of what you two built here. Mrs. Wu spoke through her husband's translation, but her tears needed no words. Her children had been accepted and educated alongside everyone else, treated as equals. It was a gift beyond price. As Zara looked around at the gathered community, at the children laughing and playing, at the schoolhouse standing proud against the prairie sky, she felt a sense of accomplishment deeper than anything she had known. This was not the life she had imagined when she left Boston. It was better. That night, alone in their bedroom, Samuel kissed her with the passion that still felt new and thrilling. I love you, he murmured against her skin. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for seeing me, Zara replied, for never being threatened by who I am. How could I be threatened by the person who gave me the world? Their lovemaking that night was tender and urgent, a celebration of all they had built together. Afterward, lying in Samuel's arms, Zara felt completely at peace. She had found her place, her purpose, her partner. Summer brought new developments. Zara discovered she was pregnant in June. The news filled them both with joy and terror in equal measure. "I don't know how to be a father," Samuel admitted. "What if I'm not good enough?" "You'll be wonderful," Zara assured him. "Look how you are with the students. You're patient and kind and loving. Our child will be lucky to have you." "What about the school? Will you be able to keep teaching?" "For a while, yes. And when the baby comes, we'll figure it out. Maybe we can hire an assistant teacher. Or I'll teach with the baby nearby. Women have been doing both for centuries." The pregnancy was easier than she feared. The morning sickness passed quickly, and she felt strong throughout the summer. She continued teaching, though Samuel became increasingly protective as her belly swelled. The students were excited about the coming baby. They drew pictures, offered advice, and competed to suggest names. It was a community celebration, this new life that would be born into their midst. In September, when the new school year began, Zara had 30 students enrolled. She had indeed hired an assistant, a young woman from one of the farming families who had completed her own education and wanted to help others. With 2 teachers, they could handle the larger enrollment and provide more individualized attention. The baby came in late February 1875, during a snowstorm that left Samuel pacing anxiously while the midwife attended to Zara. The labor was long and difficult, testing Zara's strength in ways she had never imagined. But when she finally held their son in her arms, every moment of pain was forgotten. They named him James, after Samuel's father, with the middle name of Theodore, after Zara's grandfather. He was a healthy baby with his father's dark hair and his mother's inquisitive eyes. Samuel cried when he held his son for the first time, overwhelmed by the responsibility and the love. "I'm going to give him everything," he vowed. "Every opportunity, every advantage. He's going to know how much he matters." Zara recovered slowly from the birth, but she was back at the schoolhouse within a month, bringing baby James with her. The students adored having a baby in the classroom. The older girls helped care for him while Zara taught, and even the boys were gentle and protective around him. Life settled into a new rhythm. The school continued to grow and thrive. By 1876, they had nearly 40 students and had added a 3rd teacher. The Parker School had become renowned in the region for the quality of its education and its inclusive policies. Families moved to the area specifically to have access to it. Samuel had become more than a rancher. He was a school board member, a teacher's assistant, and an advocate for education throughout Nebraska. He wrote articles for agricultural journals, as Zara had once suggested, but also about education and the importance of learning. His perspective as a late learner gave him unique insights that resonated with others. "Who would have thought?" he said one evening, watching Zara nurse their son while reading a book, "that asking you to teach me would lead to all this?" "You changed my life," Zara said softly. "When I was at my lowest, when I thought I had failed at everything, you showed me a different path. You changed mine first. I was just existing before you came. Now I'm living." As the years passed, their love only deepened. They had 2 more children, a daughter named Elizabeth in 1877 and another son named Michael in 1879. Each birth was celebrated by the entire school community, which had grown into an extended family. The school continued to expand. By 1880, they had built an additional wing and employed 5 teachers. The Parker School educated over 80 students, ranging from primary grades through advanced secondary work. Some of their older students went on to universities back east, fulfilling dreams their parents never dared to have. The town of Fort Kearny eventually apologized formally for how they had treated Zara. The mayor came out to the school to present her with a commendation for her contributions to education in the region. She accepted it graciously, though she pointed out that the real credit belonged to the families who had believed in education enough to support the school. "You started this," the mayor insisted. "You had the vision and the courage to see it through." "My husband had the courage to ask me to teach him," Zara corrected. "Everything else grew from that." Samuel, standing beside her, squeezed her hand. They shared a look that communicated volumes: gratitude, love, pride in what they had built together. One evening in the spring of 1882, when James was 7, Elizabeth was 5, and Michael was 3, the family sat together on the porch watching the sunset paint the prairie gold and crimson. The schoolhouse stood in the distance, solid and permanent. The sound of cattle lowing mixed with the creek's gentle burble. "Tell us how you met," James demanded. It was his favorite story. Samuel looked at Zara, and she nodded for him to begin. "Well," he said, pulling James onto his lap while Elizabeth and Michael snuggled against their mother. "I was a lonely rancher who could barely raid, and your mother was the smartest woman in Nebraska. And you asked her to teach you," James filled in, knowing the story by heart but never tiring of it. "I did. And she said yes, even though people told her not to. She saw something in me that I didn't see in myself." "He saw something in me too," Zara added. "He saw that being educated didn't make me strange or wrong. He saw that my mind was a gift, not a burden." "Then you fell in love," Elizabeth said with the romantic certainty of a 5-year-old. "Then we fell in love," Zara confirmed. "And we built this school, and we had you 3, and we made a life together." "And lived happily ever after?" Michael asked. "We're still living it," Samuel said. "Every day with your mother is part of the happy ending." Later that night, after the children were asleep, Zara and Samuel lay in bed talking quietly, as had become their habit. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't asked me to teach you?" Zara wondered. "I'd probably still be alone on this ranch, barely able to read, thinking I was too stupid for anything better." He turned to face her in the darkness. "And you?" "I'd probably have gone back to Boston in defeat. Maybe found a position at some stuffy girls' academy where I'd spend my days teaching needlework and deportment. Instead, you're teaching 3 generations of Nebraska children to read and think and dream." "We're teaching them," Zara corrected. "This is as much your accomplishment as mine. I just asked you to teach me everything. And I did. And you taught me things too. You taught me that love doesn't require sacrifice of self. That partnership means building each other up. That dreams can change and adapt and become even better than originally imagined." Samuel kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly. "I love you, Zara Parker. Thank you for seeing a lonely rancher and finding something worth teaching. I love you, Samuel Parker. Thank you for never being afraid of my mind." They made love slowly and tenderly, as married people do when they know each other's bodies and hearts intimately. Afterward, Zara rested her head on Samuel's chest, listening to his heartbeat, and thought about how strange and wonderful life could be. She had come to Fort Kearny, Nebraska in 1873 as an educated woman full of ideals and determination. The town had mocked her for being too educated, too forward, too unwilling to diminish herself. She had nearly given up, nearly returned east in defeat. Then a lonely rancher had appeared at her schoolhouse door and said, "Teach me everything." Those 3 words had changed both their lives. Samuel had learned to read, yes, but more than that, he had learned to value himself. He had discovered that intelligence was not fixed at birth, but could be developed and nurtured. He had found confidence and purpose, And Zara had learned that she did not have to choose between love and accomplishment, that marriage could be partnership, that building something meaningful required flexibility and adaptation, that sometimes the best victories were not the ones originally planned. Together, they had created something that mattered. A school that educated hundreds of children, a community that valued learning, a family built on mutual respect and love, a life that honored both of them. The years continued to pass peacefully. The Parker School became an institution in Nebraska, eventually expanding into a full academy with dormitories for students from distant families. Samuel and Zara remained active in its operation well into their 50s, though they gradually handed over day-to-day management to younger teachers they had trained. Their children all became educators in their own right. James opened a school in Colorado. Elizabeth taught at a women's college in Chicago. Michael took over the Parker School, running it with the same principles his parents had established. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1904, surrounded by children, grandchildren, former students and friends, Samuel stood to make a toast. He was 56 now, his hair shot with gray, his face deeply weathered by years of prairie sun. But his eyes still held that same earnestness Zara had fallen in love with decades earlier. 30 years ago, I asked my wife to teach me everything, he said. She's been doing it ever since. She taught me to read, to think, to dream. She taught me that I was capable of more than I believed. She taught me that love means celebrating your partner's strengths, not fearing them. She taught me that education is the greatest gift we can give to future generations. He turned to Zara, who sat beside him, her own hair silver now, her face lined with the marks of a life well lived. But most importantly, she taught me what it means to be truly seen by another person, to have someone look at you and understand not just who you are, but who you could become. That's the gift she gave me, and it's the gift we've tried to give to every student who's walked through our doors. The gathered crowd applauded, but Samuel only had eyes for Zara. He raised his glass. To my wife, my partner, my teacher, my love, thank you for everything. To us, Zara replied, raising her own glass. To the lonely rancher who wasn't afraid to ask for help, and to the stubborn teacher who didn't know when to quit, to the life we built together. They kissed, and the crowd erupted in cheers, but Samuel and Zara were lost in each other, remembering that first awkward reading lesson, that first tentative kiss, that first night as husband and wife. Remembering every triumph and challenge they had faced together, every student they had taught, every dream they had fulfilled. That night, in the bedroom they had shared for 3 decades, Samuel held Zara close. "Any regrets?" he asked, as he sometimes still did. "Not a single one," she replied, as she always did. "You? Only that I waited so long to ask you to teach me. We could have had even more years together. We have exactly the years we were meant to have, and they've been perfect." As they drifted off to sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, Zara thought about that young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach in Fort Kearny in 1873. She had been so sure of her path, so determined to prove herself, so afraid of becoming less than she was. She could never have imagined this life, could never have predicted that a lonely rancher's simple request would lead to such joy and fulfillment. Could never have known that her greatest accomplishment would not be the school or the students or the reputation, but the partnership she had built with a man who had never been threatened by her brilliance. The woman who had been mocked for being too educated had found her place. Not by diminishing herself, not by conforming to expectations, but by holding firm to her values while remaining open to unexpected possibilities. And the lonely rancher who had said, "Teach me everything," had learned the most important lesson of all, That love, real love, means growing together, learning together, building together. That two people who honor each other's minds and hearts can create something far greater than either could alone. Their story became part of Nebraska legend. The Parker School operated for over 100 years, educating generations of children. And every student who passed through its doors learned not just reading and arithmetic and history, but a more important lesson. That education is not about making yourself small to fit others' expectations. It's about becoming everything you're capable of being. And that the best partnerships are built on mutual respect, shared dreams, and the willingness to say, "Teach me everything," to the person you love. Zara and Samuel lived long, full lives surrounded by the family and community they had built. When Zara passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 78 in 1928, Samuel held her hand and whispered, "Thank you for everything you taught me." He followed her 6 months later, unable to imagine life without his teacher, his partner, his love. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the school, their headstone simply reading Samuel and Zara Parker, teachers, partners, dreamers. And every year, on the anniversary of the school's founding, students past and present gathered at their grave to celebrate the legacy of a lonely rancher and an educated woman who had proven that love and learning could change the world.